Thank you, Clint, for jumping on and sharing your story. I have a pretty interesting story that happened with your dad. You want to share that with
Yeah,
us?
absolutely. Love to. Anything I can do to help somebody else not go through the torture we did. So my dad had his estate plan set up. He had a trust, and then when he died, we went and opened the trust, and a couple of things we noticed right off the bat. First thing we noticed is that the trust was set up and his house was funded into the trust. But a couple of things that were a little bit problematic that he should have caught was that the backup trustees, the contingent trustees, were his dad and my mom's dad, which both had been dead for 10 and 15 years each. That could have been a problem, but it wasn't because my mom was still alive. So no worries, right? And we went through and everything had been funded into the trust. All of his assets had been there, except for two cash value life insurance policies that he was the owner of and he was the beneficiary of it, but it was not into the trust. So there was no contingent owner, which was the trust or my mom or anything like that. So we had to go to work and call the insurance company, and they said, "You're not the person. You're not the owner of this." Well, he's passed away. The insurance people said, "Well, we need proof from the court that your mom is the owner, the contingent owner, or the beneficiary of his trust." So file paperwork with the insurance people, get the right paperwork back and forth for a long time, hours and hours and hours, and getting the right thing and getting an attorney involved. And finally, we go to the court to get the judge to sign off on it. And he says, "Yep, we got to get you a court date." And it was like 9 months in advance. Okay, so we just waited and we waited and we waited, fill out more paperwork. We finally show up to the court and we sit there. We were told to be there first thing in the morning. We got there, we sat there all day, 10 or 12 hours or something. And they said that it took too long. You'll have to come back tomorrow. We sat there all day again. Ended up being 2 days, and we got in right before close of business. I think it was like 17 hours of sitting there in court. And finally, we got there, and the judge says, "Yep, this looks like it should be your mom's. Is there anybody fighting this?" Or nope, nobody's fighting it. None of the siblings, nobody else is doing it. And we still had to get the piece of paperwork and file it with the insurance. And then the insurance people had to give something else back and then take it back to the court. So it was another time going back to court. Ended up being quite a long time, just almost a whole year back and forth and waiting and getting all the proper paperwork and hundreds of hours of waiting on hold and all that stuff. And then more importantly, thousands of dollars worth of attorney's fees and probate costs and all of that stuff just to get it from the name of my dad into the name of my mom. So for me, the overall thing is make sure that your paperwork is in and make sure that it's properly funded. He didn't have power of attorneys, healthcare directives, or any of that. He just had a basic trust. All of the rest of that stuff would have been really helpful to have as well. And it was just traumatic for my mom to have to fight for her husband's stuff and talk to a judge about it. And it was just a mess for her, and then just a pain in the backside for me and everybody else working on it. So get your trust set up. That's the bottom line thing.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I can only imagine how stressful that must have been all the time. And I just, going through the court system is the worst. With government, I'd rather go to the dentist.
Absolutely. It was just kind of a nightmare, especially for my mom. It was just a mess. So just hours and time and money for me, but for her, it was traumatic for her to have to deal with all that on top of just losing her husband.
Yeah, I can imagine. Thank you so much for sharing that, Clint.
Absolutely.